Hey, Center Pointe friends and family. I want to real quickly just touch on one of the staple traditions and elements of our services and worship as a church family, and that is communion, or sometimes we call it the Lord's Supper. And I just want to explain what it is that we do and why we do it real quick. It's really about the story of God. It really is about how God originally created things to be whole, that our relationship with Him, with others, and ourselves was whole, complete, and at peace. It was fulfilled. But then sin entered the picture. And sin really is just this attitude that we want to choose to do life our own way instead of trusting God's way. And what happens is that sin severs those relationships that I mentioned, whether it's in ourselves, become ashamed and guilty and bashful and this sort of thing, but also the relationship with others, finger pointing, starting of accusing, all this sort of thing. But most importantly, our relationship with God was severed by this attitude of sin, and it caused a separation between us and God. And because God is the giver of all good things, that separation is not good news. It's bad news. And so God has been trying ever since that sin came into the picture to restore that life the way He originally created back into us and called us into it. And so this sin that separates us from God is really the problem. And so God had a problem to try to figure out that some theologians call a problem fit for God. And so He was trying to figure out, how do I get back to restoring the relationship I have with the people I love so much, but remove sin in the process? How do I remove sin without removing the people attached to that sin? And so that was a difficult, complex issue for God, but one that He had a solution for. And the solution wasn't some math problem solution or some, a complex situation, in life to figure out. The solution wasn't a thing. It was a person. And that person's name is Jesus. See, what Jesus did in coming to this world, He lived a life that modeled for us the way things were originally with God. He modeled a relationship that was whole with God, whole with others around Him, and whole within Himself. And so He modeled that relationship for us, but He also sacrificed His own life in replacement of us to take away the sin that was separating us from God. And Jesus did that voluntarily so that He can invite us in to this restored, redeemed, and reconciled relationship in this life that He modeled for us, that redeemed the relationship and restored the relationship with God, with others, and even within ourselves. And so this is what Jesus did. And this is the life He lived and called us into. And this is what He calls us to remember in communion, in the Lord's Supper. He calls us to remember the life that we've been called into, that He modeled for us so well in His time here. But He also called us to remember the sacrifice and the death that it took to bring about restoring that life again. He has called us to remember because He knows we're inclined to forget things. We forget things all the time, whether it's our keys, an appointment, or an anniversary or birthday. It's never good when we forget things. And so God has given us tools to just remember Him. Simple tools. He's given us bread and juice. The bread could come in the form of a cracker, even a stale little chiclet that oftentimes is used at church, or a loaf of bread, or even some other element. The cup, and that is meant to represent His broken body. The cup is meant to represent Jesus' shed blood. And this could be, Jesus used wine. We oftentimes use grape juice. But the bottom line here is Jesus didn't ask us to do anything complicated to remember Him. He didn't ask us to fix elaborate dishes. He just used some basic elements to call us to remember the life He lived and has called us into, to restoring the relationships in the world, but with our God, with others, and within ourselves, but also the death that He provided. And he said, remember that death in the form of a broken body in the bread and the shed blood in form of juice or wine. And so Center Pointe, I hope that informs your communion practice as you get together as friends and family, not only for this season, but for the seasons to come, that you remember that these elements are meant to remind us of the sacrifice Jesus made, but the life that he has called us into, the ministry and identity and purpose of reconciliating the world and others to God just the way we know he's done it with us. So God bless Center Pointe. Enjoy your time together worshiping, and I hope that this has helped in the aspect of taking communion.